Joining us here in Washington is Julian Sanchez. He's a senior fellow with the Cato Institute, focusing on national security and intelligence surveillance. Shahid Buttar is a constitutional lawyer and the executive director of the Bill of Rights Defense Committee, a civil liberties advocacy group. And also joining us is Fred Fleitz. Over the past quarter of a century, he's served in various U.S. national security positions and is currently Senior Vice President for Policy and Programs with the Center for Security Policy here in Washington. Thanks, gentlemen, so much for joining us. Let's start with you, Julian. How did we get here in terms of the Patriot Act, bulk collection of data, and why is America now considering throwing this out?
Well, I think it's a number of things. Partly it's just that the amount of time that's passed since the attacks of 9/11 have allowed, I think, the space for a bit more reflection, I think less contaminated by fear or panic about whether the authorities that we've granted make sense. But in part it's that the disclosures by Edward Snowden, in particular about this bulk metadata program, even though something similar was reported, I think, years earlier, in this context surprised people, both because of the extraordinary scale of collection. The debate had been conducted in terms of whether, we wanted broad authorities to spy on terrorists. This was so clearly something that was sweeping in data on hundreds of millions of people who were not even suspected of any kind of wrongdoing. And also, I think an important component of this is that it was accomplished through a secret interpretation of the law that was far more expansive than most members of Congress and certainly any members of the public believed. It was the sense that you had perhaps an intelligence community somewhat out of control, unmoored from oversight, that had taken an authority that was very broad but still restrained to records that were relevant to an investigation, being used to indiscriminately vacuum up data. And I think part of the public reaction there was, well, gosh, isn't this the kind of thing, something on this scale, the kind of thing that should have been publicly debated, not done by finding a loophole in a statute and ramming it through?
All that being said, there are many political leaders in this country who want to keep that in place. Let's have a listen to the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell.
We know that the terrorists overseas are trying to recruit people in our country to commit atrocities in our country. I don't want us to go dark, in effect, and I'm afraid that the House-passed bill will basically be the end of the program, and we'll not be able to have yet another tool that we need to combat this terrorist threat from overseas.
Fred Fleitz, I want to bring you in here because you agree with Mitch McConnell, correct? And you think that the court ruling against the bulk collection can be got over.
Oh, I do. I mean, this is just one of 38 rulings, 35 of which have said this program is legal and constitutional. I worked on the House Intelligence Committee. I also worked as a CIA officer. I know this is a valuable program that has stopped terrorist attacks, is legal, has been carefully overseen, and has been misrepresented by its opponents on the left and privacy advocates. New Jersey Governor Chris Christie got it right yesterday when he said that the complaints about this program are baloney. And to our international audience, that means nonsense. Baloney.
It's a type of sausage, yeah.
I mean, frankly, it was easy to misrepresent programs like this, which had to be secret, based on the deluge of information leaked by the traitor Edward Snowden. There's a lot of confusion about these programs, and I think we have to have some rationality about this, given the threat from ISIS terrorists that are coming to the United States.
I suppose the one thing we can agree on is that we need to have some rationality in this process. And a rational approach to mass surveillance reform would entail going back to the beginning and assessing, for instance, are these programs effective? Are they constitutional? And more importantly, what are these programs in the first instance? I mean, the most important thing to realize here is that Congress has no idea what it's being asked to vote on. The idea that these programs have been subjected to rigorous oversight is, with all due respect, a complete farce. I mean, when Congress has, on the rare occasion, asked the tough questions of executive officials that they would need to know the answers to in order to have a sense of what is being conducted under the secret interpretations of the law that Julian mentioned, they've been outright lied to by senior executive officials representing each of the major political parties' administrations. This is not a partisan issue. This is an American versus Soviet issue. And the Senate Majority Leader, like Governor Christie, is quite frankly arguing for a Soviet position. And in a land that claims to lead the free world, we should have none of it. A rational decision should at least entail the transparency that has eluded us for the last 15 years.
I served on the House Intelligence Committee staff. I watched the tough oversight the tough questions asked of NSA about this program. It's true most members did not know the details of this program because it was done in secret in the committees, and the members didn't come to the intelligence committees to learn the details of these programs.
How about the authors of the Patriot Act, who themselves say that they were surprised by the revelations that they learned from the conscientious public servant who resigned his career to serve the public interest, Edward Snowden, revealing
this man's a criminal.
corruption.
This man's a criminal.
Yeah, we'll talk about
A lot
Edward
of
Snowden
people,
later.
including members of Congress, seem to think
can
otherwise.
I just interrupt? Julian, you wanted to make a point here.
Well, I mean, let's just be clear about what we're debating here, because no one disputes that, of course, when there is suspicion that a particular number is connected to terrorism, that investigators should be able to obtain that person's phone records, the phone records perhaps of their direct associates. No one is saying that that is an authority that should go away. The proposal that's on the table is to say, instead of a bulk database collected and maintained by the government of hundreds of millions of people's innocent people's records, we should do what we do in other kinds of investigations, which is to say, you get an order for the specific numbers you have suspicion about, and you go and get those from the carriers.
So the
in an
bulk
agile,
data
rapid
is
way.
kept by the phone companies
You
or
already
civil
have it, of course. We're not creating a new database. A phone company has your phone bill, and now you would go and get the records that are required. In terms of effectiveness, you look at an exhaustive report by the Privacy and Civil Liberties Oversight Board, a thorough review by the President's Surveillance Review Group, all concluding that this is effectively a program that was not effective, that had not, contrary to the statement we just heard, stopped terror attacks and saved lives domestically, that in fact it was purely duplicative, was giving the FBI information they had already been able to obtain using traditional targeted authorities, and the intelligence community itself has said they don't need this program. So at this point, you're being more Catholic than the Pope.
Fred, I'd like you to pick up on that because there has been a lot of independent studies on this bulk collection. The 9/11 Commission did suggest that, in fact, the data was there to put the pieces together, but it was actually interagency problems that didn't lead to the foiling of the plot. So what has this program stopped from happening?
Senator Dianne Feinstein has said to the Judiciary Committee that this program stopped attacks on the on the New York subway system and on the New York Stock Exchange.
Many people disagree with
it. Former Deputy CIA Director, the former Deputy CIA Director said that this program existed, Michael Morrell, existed in 9/11, in 2001. It may have stopped the 9/11 attacks.
That's preposterous, self-serving.
It's true that two liberal-dominated panels named by President Obama don't like this program. The majority of people who have looked at this program think it works.
James Sensenbrenner is a Republican who authored the Patriot Act and says that he never meant to authorize this activity.
That's true, but Sensenbrenner never came to the Intelligence Committee for briefings on how this program operated. Both intelligence committees, on a bipartisan basis, carefully monitor this program. When people like Senator Wyden say, I'm against this program, we have to stop it, Wyden has been making his case in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee for years and was voted down by members of Congress who were informed about the details of how this program works.
So why were they surprised by Edward Snowden's revelations if they were so read into and engaged in such rigorous and long-standing oversight of these programs?
The members of the committees were not surprised by Snowden's revelations.
I want to bring in Edward Snowden because obviously a lot of public attention went to these programs after his revelations. And now, if you look at the polling, a vast majority of Americans want this program to change. Are they right?
The program is going to have to change. I wish it wouldn't, but frankly, Snowden has done so much damage. I mean, I concede the data is going to have to be held by the phone companies. I don't think NSA will be allowed to keep it. But it's my hope Senator McConnell will be able to move the bill under consideration in Washington in his direction to keep this as a robust a program as possible to stop terrorist attacks, which I think are going to increase because of ISIS in the United States.
Snowden's a traitor, Fred was saying. Your reaction? Julian first.
You know, I think it's actually not that interesting to debate. I mean, we can question the wisdom of every document that he exfiltrated. I think certainly the case for this program is extraordinarily strong. Even DNI Clapper, the Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, has said, in effect, that probably this should have been revealed publicly and debated publicly rather than being done secretly.
You say the case for disclosing the document.
This is a case for disclosing the program.
Okay.
You know, whether you have a good or a bad opinion of Edward Snowden, he's disclosed this. It's obviously had an extraordinary effect on the public debate about it, and we should you know, continue having that debate whether or not you personally like the person responsible for disclosing it.
clearly. And moreover, and the important part here is that but for that disclosure, we wouldn't be having this debate because it would be continuing to operate these programs in secret despite the law, the Constitution, the intention of the people who drafted the law, and the 530 people charged under our Constitution with overseeing executive agencies, all of which, I want to make this point very clear, have been lied to their face, on the record, under oath by executive officials under both administrations. So to call someone a traitor for revealing to the public matters of grave global concern, igniting a long overdue controversy, to call them a traitor would presume the legitimacy of 15 years of secrecy. And the last thing I just say here is that I think of Edward Snowden standing very much in line of a legacy established by President Eisenhower, who warned us 60 years ago of exactly this happening.
Fred, I just want to pick up on one thing. General Alexander at the Black Hat Conference in 2013 laid out the sort of metadata and how difficult it was to access any phone number, the FISA ruling. Do you think Americans have missed all that?
I think it's hard for Americans to focus on what this is about because Snowden inundated the American political scene with so much leaked information. But the reason why I think Snowden is a traitor who should spend the rest of his natural life in a jail cell is because the vast majority of the stuff he leaked had nothing to do with American privacy or American citizens.
He revealed that my office was spied on by the NSA.
Most of the material he leaked concerned terrorism, spying on foreign countries, and military secrets, and he did enormous damage to U.S. national security.
Isn't it not, in fact, the case that the majority of what he revealed was spying on innocent Americans not suspected of any activity?
That's completely untrue.
Of course it's true.
It's completely untrue.
As a factual matter, you cannot sustain that proposition.
I know this. I know it isn't true.
The first document he revealed, in itself, one document, authorized the surveillance of every Verizon business customer right in the country, hundreds of millions of people. And you're trying to tell me that of those hundreds of millions of people, most of them are actually suspected of terrorist activity?
Gentlemen,
that's a complete misrepresentation of the program. That's not what...
Okay, a heated debate. We need to take a break. More with our panel after this. Stay watching.